Want to corkscrew up your back or your head? Then I've got just the coaster for you.
I'm gonna rank every coaster and give them a review. Every drop and every hill, every launch and every loop. Rate it 1 to 10 and then we'll do it all again. Gonna rank and review every coaster.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Mario. This is a channel all about amusement park type stuff, but mostly coasters. And today, in my never-ending journey to rank and review every single coaster I have ever been on, I'm going to be talking about a crappy collection of Corkscrew coasters. But real quick, I just wanted to say thank you to anybody that's subscribed to this channel. You guys are the best. And to anybody that's not subscribed yet, you better subscribe or else RMC is going to replace all of their coasters with Aero corkscrews. But without any further ado, let's review. Now, at the end of the last episode, the Spinny Wheel decided that I was going to review Super Manège at Six Flags Ronde, but I figured why not kill a few birds with one stone and rank some coasters that are pretty similar, especially since there's not a whole lot to say about these coasters individually. Now, there are 3 coasters that we're going to be talking about today, the first of which is the aforementioned Super Manège at Six Flags Ronde, which is the only Vekoma in this group, and it is also the only defunct coaster in this group. While that is probably for the best, that does leave Ronde with even fewer coasters than when I visited there 10 plus years ago. So bittersweet, I guess. Next is Corkscrew at Cedar Point, and last but not least is Demon at California's Great America. And before we start talking about the individual ride experience and comparing the coasters in that regard, let's go ahead and quickly look at the stats of each of these coasters. Super Manège has a height of 75 feet, a top speed of 40 miles per hour, 2 inversions, which are both corkscrews, and 2,400 feet of track. Corkscrew's a bit bigger with a height of 85 feet, a top speed of 48 miles per hour, 3 inversions, including 2 corkscrews and a vertical loop, but a shorter track length of 2,050 feet. Demon is the biggest coaster with a max height of 102 feet, a top speed of 50 miles per hour, and 4 inversions with 2 corkscrews and 2 vertical loops, and only a slightly longer track length with 2,130 feet. So right away, just looking at those stats, Super Manège has the longest track length, but the slowest speed, so immediately that would imply that it has bad pacing and is the most boring, and I'll go ahead and spoil that now. That is very, very true. But in general, that is the theme with these coasters. They are boring and in a lot of cases uncomfortable as well, which is just the perfect combination for a not so great coaster. I'll try and be positive where I can. Now, to dive a little more in depth to the experience of each of these coasters, we're going to go ahead and start out with Super Manège. You start things off in an already very boring way with a painfully slow lift hill. Now, the one nice thing about this coaster is you do get a good view from the top of the lift. You're right on the edge of the land, actually, so you do get a pretty view of the water. After the lift, you dip into what I guess you could consider a pre-drop, and despite the fact that you are crawling at about 5 to 10 miles per hour, the profiling of this track is bad enough to already start giving you headbanging. At the bottom of the first drop, you're not going fast, yet you are going fast enough to get lots of shaking and even more headbanging, but what comes next is even more uncomfortable than the bottom of the drop, which is this sort of weird, swooping, dropping right-hand turn that doesn't have nearly enough banking going into it, so you are just violently slammed to the left of your seat with your head banging right into your restraint. Next up are the corkscrews, which don't really offer anything as far as forces are concerned. There's no hang time, there's not really any positives. Thankfully, there aren't any laterals either. The track is, or even more so now, considering the ride's been demolished, super worn down. That's a trend throughout this ride, just shakiness and head smacking. Coming out of that double corkscrew, well, the ride is pretty much over, yet you still have a considerable amount of ride time left. You have a couple small drops and a few pointless yet painful turns until you finally get to the end of the ride, where you're kind of just thankful that the whole experience is over. And aside from that view, there's not really anything redeemable about this coaster. If it were smooth and had better restraints, this model could be a pretty good starter coaster, but aside from that, it is boring as all heck while also being painful. And it looks ugly, or looked ugly. It probably looks better now that it's been torn down, honestly. Yeah, not a good ride in any capacity. But now to move back to the States, we have Corkscrew, and things get a little bit better with Corkscrew, but you do still have to deal with a lot of the same problems. Corkscrew starts off the same way as Super Manège, but with a slightly faster lift hill, so that's nice. Gets you into the ride experience quicker, which helps the whole thing be over with quicker, so that's definitely a positive. Instead of having a curving first drop, you have a straight first drop, which is nice because since you aren't turning, you're not getting as much head banging, although the track is still pretty rough on this coaster as well. But another one of the positives of having this be a straight first drop is if you are sitting towards the back, you will actually get some airtime on this first drop. Once you do hit the bottom of the first drop, you hit an airtime hill, which can be a good thing or a bad thing. The hill itself provides a considerably good amount of airtime, and it's pretty forceful as well. You do get popped out of your seat. It is a little uncomfortable because you have the over-the-shoulder restraints, so your shoulders are hitting those. And again, since the track itself is shaky, you are going to be moving your head side to side, whether you like it or not. And aside from the head banging, you might also hurt your back because of how abruptly you come back down into your seat from being out of it. So it is a bit of a headbanger and a back cracker as well. After that, you head into the vertical loop, which is fine aside from the thing that I'm going to stop mentioning from here on out because it is just throughout the entire ride, the shaky track. Aside from that, it is a fine vertical loop, not particularly forceful, not a ton of hang time, just a fine vertical loop. After that, you go up into a section of straight track, which is kind of odd. It seems like there would be trim brakes here, although there are not any trim brakes there. After that straight track, you have a dipping turn to the right, again with awkward, improper banking. So you do kind of slam into your restraint, similar to the turn after the first drop on Super Manège. You then go into the corkscrews with a decent amount of speed, so you're not really getting any hang time, nor are you getting positive G's pushing you into your seat. Lastly, you have a right turn that takes you upwards, a very mild left turn that thankfully doesn't actually hurt like the previous turn, and your ride is finally over. So there are a couple things I can say that are better about this than Super Manège. It is at least more exciting. There are actually some forces on this ride, and the ride is over quicker. So if you're having a bad time, you don't have to wait as long to get off of the ride. Last but not least, let's talk about Demon. Now, straight out the gate, I'm going to say that despite riding this relatively recently, this is probably the ride I remember the least. And that is not a bad thing, because I remember the two previous coasters for the absolute wrong reasons, whereas Demon is only boring, but it is at least not painful. I cannot think of a single moment on this ride where I was thinking, oh my god, get me off right now. So Demon starts out by dipping into a tunnel, which I guess is pretty nice. You go up the lift hill, do a small little pre-drop, hit a left-hand turn, and go down the first drop. And thankfully, like I said, this coaster is not rough, especially compared to the previous two coasters. So this first drop doesn't provide forces, but it also doesn't provide any head banging or neck breaking. That drop is followed by consecutive vertical loops, which again, unfortunately, do not provide any forces. The second vertical loop lets you out into another tunnel, which used to have lighting effects. It may or may not have them now. I have never experienced the light effects, so to me it's just a dark tunnel that is slightly better than naked straight track. You cruise up into a very, very shallow hill, which takes you into another left-hand turn that'll eventually lead you through some rock work, which is pretty nice, and two corkscrews that again provide almost no forces. And just like that, the ride is essentially over before you even realize it started. And that's it for Demon. Thankfully, it's an experience that you aren't going to regret, but it's also an experience that you probably won't remember. So, in conclusion, Corkscrew models, or rides that are similar to corkscrew models, they're boring and potentially very painful. There's not really any point in riding them unless you want to boost your coaster count, and there's a reason that there's more of them being removed than being added. And now for the fun part, rating and ranking each of these coasters. First, I'm going to rate these coasters on a scale of 1 to 10, and then I'll let y'all know where I put them on my list of all the coasters I've ridden. Super Manège, 1. No redeeming qualities. Has the nice view, but like the view doesn't fix my headache after I get off of the ride. It currently sits at number 223 out of the 227 coasters I've been on, and all of the coasters below it are the exact same model. So this is essentially the second worst coaster I've ever been on. Corkscrew, just as rough and uncomfortable as Super Manège, but it does at least do some things. I give it a 1.5 out of 10. I'll probably never be riding it again, and it ranks at 220 out of 227, so a smidgen better. How about Demon? Well, honestly, like a 4, maybe a 4.5 out of 10. It's not a terrible coaster if you've never been on an inverting coaster before. Would be better with better restraints so that there's no risk of headbanging, but thankfully it's not rough, so it's not going to beat you up. All that places it at 167 on my list. That puts it significantly above the other coasters. I would take this over kiddie coasters, although most other thrill coasters are significantly better. So, there you have it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know these models are not popular in the slightest, so I'd love to know what you guys think about them. Make sure you guys like the video if you liked it, give it 2 thumbs down if you didn't like it. Go ahead and subscribe and turn on notifications for more content like this. And make sure you tune in next time where I'll be talking about... Auf Wiedersehen.